When looking to upgrade my studio, there were a few new technologies that I was looking to get into. But there was one platform that a lot of people touted it has the best plugins out. And though I don't believe they're the best plugins, I do think their plugins are absolutely phenomenal. And these are 10 of them that I go to all the time. Let's do it. So when finally stepping up from the Mac Pro 5.1 tower, I was looking for more power to run more plugins. Now, everyone around me was telling me about Universal Audio, and a few people told me about Antelope, as they both have plugin processing built into external units. So when building this new mix system, I didn't want to have to think about how much processing power I have. I just want to be able to focus and mix and not worry about that. So I picked up 3 satellite quad-core units and 2 PCIe cards, both quad-core as well. So with that and the new MacBook Pro, M1 Pro, and then also the Antelope Zengo, I think I'm pretty much covered. What do you think? So in this video, I want to cover 10 of the most used UAD plugins that I lean on when mixing. So let's start with number 10, the Ampex ATR-102 tape plugin. Now with this one, it has a really nice tape saturation, and you can achieve that by messing with the record knob and then balancing everything back out with the reproduce knob. Now my start off settings for this plugin is for the tape type of 900. For the calibration, I usually set this at either +6, or if I want more saturation, I'll do +7.5. And the head, I always use a 1/2 inch, so the one in the middle. I always have it on repro, but I'll go through each button, from the sync to the input and even the through, just to see what works best. And I always use it on nab. That's just an EQ curve. Now, not only that, but I also always have it on open, because I'm always messing with the bias to see what else I can get out of it. Other than that, I set the taste and I'm good to go. So let's go to number 9, the UA Pure Plate. This is a really nice plate, and I'll usually use this as I'm cutting vocals, just so the singer can hear a plate reverb as they're singing. My start off settings for this plugin is on a low cut. I usually set this to 90 and the pre-delay at 50 and maybe a little bit more. The reverb time is anywhere from 1 to 3. I always have it on wet solo, and I never mess with the bass or treble unless I really think I have to. All right, next, number 8, the API 550A. This is a great plugin. I mainly use it on all my buses. So the tracks go to the buses and the buses go to the main master bus. Now, my main start off setting on this plugin is literally the factory default, because I'm not ever sure what I'm going to do on this plugin. If anything, just running it through it makes a difference, and pushing into it also adds saturation. You got to check this one out. Next, number 7, the EMT 250. This is a really nice reverb. I mainly use this on background vocals and every now and then lead vocals. My main start off setting for this one is for the timing at 2 seconds. And for the low frequency decay, I usually have it at 1 or 1.5 times. And for the high frequency decay or dampening, I usually have that at max. Every now and then, I may put that on 0.5. And for the pre-delay, well, most times I have it on 20 or 40, but that really depends on the song. Now, most times I have it on a bus, so I always have it on wet solo, and I would say about 80% of the time, I use it as a front reverb and not like in the back. So selecting the rear output, I really do it maybe 20% of the time. All right, next, number 6, the SPL Transient Designer. I used to use the BX version, then I used the Waves, the Soft Tube, the Native Instruments version, but when I found out that UA are the ones that modeled the SPL version, I had to demo it, and now it's my go-to. So my start-off settings on this one is the attack at 3, the sustain is either at -3 or +3. Just depends if I want to lengthen the kick or snare or keyboard part or bass, and then I level match with the output gain. Alright, number 5, the DBX 160. Now I used to use the hardware unit, and I use the plugin the same way. So my starting point is 1 volt up to about 300 volts, just depends on how much compression I need on the said audio. Now the compression, sometimes I put it on 1.5, sometimes I put it on 3 or 4 or 10. I'll try each one to see which one feels better. If it's a kick, I lean towards more of the 4 or the 10. So I'm trying to get as much punch as I can, and maybe I'll dial it back with the mix knob if I feel I need to. But if it's a snare or a drum loop, I'll start off at 1.5 to 3 to see how either one of those feel. And then the output, of course, is the taste to make sure I level match. And for the meter, I'm always looking at the gain change, how much compression I'm doing. All right, number 4, Empirical Labs Distressor EL8. Great plugin. I've always loved the Distressor sound, and this captures it brilliantly. So my start-off settings for this plugin can vary greatly. Sometimes I just use it for the saturation. So for the ratio, I'll put it on 1.1. I'll use distortion 2 or distortion 3, and I always use the high pass sidechain filter. That's in the detector side. And the input is the taste, and the output is of course level matching. Now what I love about this unit, it has a headroom knob, and I'll play with that. Pushing it more to the right gives you a little bit more distortion or saturation, and then going left counterclockwise gives you less of that. Now when it comes to kicks or snares, that varies greatly as well. Sometimes I just want to tap it, so I'll put it on 2.1. Same high pass on the detector side. I never use the high pass on the audio side, and I either pick distortion 2 or distortion 3, just whichever fits best for the audio. When it comes to kicks, the attack is usually at 10. Every now and then I'll push it a little bit at 9 or 8. The release varies greatly as well. I put that at 1, or I'll leave it at 5. Just matters on the tempo of the song. If it's a slower song, I'll leave it at 5. Or like a mid-tempo song, I'll leave it at 5. But if it's more of a up-tempo song or a dance song, that's when I'll start messing with the release. I rarely use the mix knob on this because I want all the sound of the Distressor. But snares, keyboard parts, basses, with basses, I always use it on opto with the same detector side, only using the high pass. And with basses, I usually go with distortion 2. It's rare that I go with distortion 3. For keyboards, I'll go for distortion 3. But with keyboards, I usually keep it at 4.1, or sometimes I'll even make it at 6.1 as far as the ratio. And the attack for a bass can vary. I usually have that at 8 or 7, sometimes at 5. I'll leave it there because I really want to attack the bass. For keyboard parts, it's the same thing. And now for the release, just depends on the tempo again. Now, as far as the gain reduction, that's a big one on all of them. And that really is for taste. Sometimes I'm barely hitting it. And when I say barely hitting it, I'm talking about maybe 2 to 3 dB of compression. But if I want the full sound of it, I'm knocking it a little bit, up to about 6. For the bass, it can be anywhere from 7 to 10. And for keyboard parts, just tapping it, no more than 6 dB. All right, number 3, the LA2A by Teletronics. I use this on every vocal I have, and I use 2 of these versions. The first one I reach for is the LA2A Silver. Now, let me explain. The lead vocal is what I reach for the Silver. But on the backgrounds, believe it or not, I use the Legacy. They both have an incredible sound, It brings the vocal forward in a unique way and is definitely a favorite. Now with this one, the lead vocal, I use it anywhere from 3 to 7. And for the backgrounds, it's the same way, anywhere from 3 to 7. Just depends. It has that perfect smoothed out vocal sound that's on so many hit records, and I see why. All right, number 2, the 1176 LN Rev 3 by Universal Audio. Now, like the LA2A, this always goes on the vocal, but the settings can vary greatly. On the vocal, I usually have the attack up at 4 and the release at 7, but the input and output varies. I try to get anywhere from 3 to 7 dB of compression, and the ratio on this is always at 4. Now, this one is more versatile. I also use it on drum loops, and when I use it on drum loops, sometimes I approach it with the all buttons function, and that's when you select the 4 and 20 or select all buttons. It's the same thing. And when I do that, I usually have the attack at 1, which is the slowest attack, and again, the release anywhere from 7 to in the middle of 7 and 5, so 6. And I'll be getting anywhere from 1 to 3 dB of compression and upwards, just depends on the drum loop. Now, do I use the other ones? Of course I do. In this package, they all sound great. I mainly use the 1176 LN, just used to that one, and I've used it so many times before I got the plugins. Now, another thing I use is the legacy version, which is also an LN. LN meaning low noise. I use the legacy version all the time as well, and I use it on various things. It could be a shaker loop, it could be a tambourine loop, it could be crashes, it can be effects, it could be kicks, snares, background vocals, so many things. A really great sounding unit. All right, that comes up to number 1, the Neve 1084 Preamp and EQ plugin. This one sounds so good. So how do I use this? Well, let's start off with the preamp. I usually set the preamp to start off point of 20 or 25. Just depends on the audio. I mainly use the pad at -20 and mic Z set at low most times. Now, I use the EQ, but barely. I usually set the high to 1 notch at 12K. Sounds really, really good. The mid-tone at 1.6, and again, 1 notch, and the low at 35 with again, 1 notch. And I start off there. I don't use the high pass or low pass filter unless I really have to, but I do use the fader all the time. That adds a little bit more saturation. So I'll push that fader up until I get the maximum saturation. And then the clean output is at the bottom, and I'll just turn that down. I hope that helps. All right, that was the top 10 UAD plugins that I currently use. Try out the tips that I gave, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.